What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We went through each of the Power 5 conferences, and I gave you my tier rankings for each conference, putting the teams into different groups, into different tiers. And now we're going to do it with the entire Power 5. All of those teams that we did, people were asking, well, how would these teams line up together across all the different conferences? So we're going to put all the tiers together. There will be six tiers, and we're just doing the Power 5 teams. I'll mention some of the Group of 5 and independents that I have evaluated. I've gone through and all the Power 5 teams. I've done the roster updates and everything, and I feel like I've got a pretty good idea on these teams and where they're going to stand in 2022. Some of this is going to be what you're hearing everywhere, especially the top tier. I think pretty much everyone's going to agree with the top tier. Any college football channel or publication that you go to, it's going to have these three teams. But after that, I think you're going to see some things that are a little bit different than what some people might be saying. But let's just start with that first tier, and I think it's pretty clear. Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, those are the three teams to beat. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on every team, especially on these tiers that have like 20 plus teams, or I don't know if we'll have any with that many, but the tiers that have a lot of teams. If you want to get a little bit more more from me on the individual teams, go back and watch all of the conference videos. But Alabama clearly there, Ohio State I think clearly there. Some people think Georgia does not belong in this first tier because of everything that they lost on defense. But the way that they recruit, the way that they have proven that they can reload, it's not just the recruiting, it's also the fact that they have proven that they can reload. They've done it in the past on that defensive side of the ball. And everything they have coming back on offense, I think Georgia does belong in this first tier. Now, how about tier number 2? This is where I'm sure some people are going to disagree with me. Look, tier 2 and tier 3 are very similar. These tier 2 teams are just teams that I have a feeling are going to have really good years. These are teams that I feel confident are going to have really good years. Some of the tier 3 teams, it could be a great year, could be an okay year, but I feel confident in these tier 2 teams. I'm talking about Michigan, Clemson, Utah, Michigan State, and Miami. These are the 5 teams that I think are almost guaranteed to get to 10 wins. Now, Michigan State has a pretty tough schedule, so maybe not as easy for them to get to 10 wins, but I feel confident on all 5 of these teams. And I think if you're going to throw in the teams outside of the Power 5, Notre Dame probably belongs in this tier. They're kind of close for me between a tier 2 and tier 3 team because of the new coaching staff. But I think there's enough there that I'd probably put Notre Dame into this tier. Michigan absolutely loaded on offense. Everyone coming back there. Defense, yeah, they got some question marks. Clemson's opposite of that. Loaded on defense, some question marks on offense. Really comes down to the quarterback play for them and the offensive line a little bit as well. Utah has a lot coming back from a really good team last year, and they're going to be coached well. They always are. Michigan State, to me, I think they proved a lot last year, and I think people are sleeping on this team. They've got some guys coming back this year and also some big-time players that they've added in the transfer portal that I think are going to help them to fill some of those gaps from the players that they did lose. And then there's Miami. Miami's a team that I think a lot of people are disagreeing with me on. I really feel confident that Miami is going to be a good team this year. I think Tyler Van Dyke is going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the country. You look at their roster and their production, really 2 years in a row that they've brought back a lot of production, and they've also added a lot of experience in the transfer portal. Their coaching staff is a top 10 coaching staff in the country. Not just Mario Cristobal, because I have my doubts about him as an on-the-field coach. I know he's a great recruiter, but I think he's done a great job of surrounding himself. If he can kind of step back, let these coordinators do their job, Miami is a very dangerous team. So if you're talking about the top 3 teams, let's say they're guaranteed to make the playoffs. And I'm not saying that I'm going to pick that, but most people are probably going to have those 3 teams in the playoff. Out of these 5 teams, we could see one of these 5 right here as that 4th playoff team. I think these are your top contenders. And then, of course, throw Notre Dame in there as well. How about tier number 3? This is the biggest tier. You see a ton of teams in tier 3. So these are teams that I think have potential to move up into tier 2. They kind of have that boom or bust potential. Not really even a bust potential. I think all of these teams are going to get to 7 or 8 wins at least. I think they all have a chance to be 10-win teams, maybe even more than that. you're probably going to see one or two teams out of here be in that playoff conversation at the end of the year. Not saying we're going to see a playoff team from this tier, which we could, but I think you're going to see a couple of teams out of here be in that playoff conversation. Figuring out which team that is the hard part, obviously. And you're going to see some teams in this tier that are disappointments. They go 7-5 and have just an average year. Some will be right there at 8-4, 9-3, which is kind of where I'd put the average of this tier. But that's what makes it so hard to predict. All of these teams, I think, are very even. Some are going to rise, some are going to fall. We'll see how it plays out. But this tier 3, a lot of dangerous teams, but teams that I'm just not 100% sold on. I'm not confident on them being great this year, but I am confident on them being, at least pretty good. Moving on to tier number 4. All right, so this is maybe more of your boom or bust potential. These are teams that I don't see a dark horse playoff contender here on this list. I just don't. But maybe we see a team or two from this list surprise, be a top 25 team, maybe even push for a New Year's Six Bowl, something like that. I'm not picking that. I don't really see that here, but we could possibly see one of these teams at least top 25. I think we'll see 2 or 3 teams out of this list finish in the top 25, and I don't think any of these teams are being really talked about as preseason top 25 teams. So we'll see some surprises from this list, and I think we'll see some disappointments. We'll see some teams on this list that probably won't even make a bowl game. It just is what it is. I think we will see that. Some teams that are expected to be 7-5, somewhere in that range, and then they finish 5-7. Which teams will it be? Of course, that's the question mark. And kind of going back to tier 3, let me just back up for a second. I think every team here on tier 3 will, I don't want to say this with 100% certainty, but I feel very confident that every team on this list, they will all make a bowl game this year. I'm going to go ahead and say that. I think every team on this list will make a bowl game. Maybe there's one team that has a bunch of injuries and just has a really bad year, but for the most part, I do feel confident that all of these teams will make a bowl game. Back to tier 4, some of these teams probably will miss a bowl game. Some of them will have disappointments like I just mentioned, but I do think we'll see some teams on this list wind up having pretty good years and being a bit of a surprise. Let's move on to tier number 5. We've got Washington State, Arizona, Cal, Iowa State, Arizona State, Northwestern, Kansas, Georgia Tech, Rutgers, and Syracuse. These are teams where I think a lot of people are not even going to pick them to get to a bowl game. They're probably going to say that these teams will not make it to a bowl game. And we'll see how it plays out. Arizona was actually not. I definitely made a mistake here. Arizona is actually supposed to be on tier number 6. I accidentally put Arizona instead of Arizona State. And then when I went back and fixed it and put Arizona State on, I forgot to take Arizona off. So Arizona is not supposed to be on tier number 5. Washington State, new quarterback. They've got some potential. Cal lost a lot. Arizona State, not really a lot to get too excited about there. Iowa State is a team that just lost a ton of production. Kansas has a lot of production coming back. I actually have them on this tier 5, not tier 6 this year. I think they might win a game or two in the Big 12. Northwestern could surprise this year. I know after a bad year, a lot of times they do that. Rutgers and Syracuse, Georgia Tech. Again, teams that I think for these teams, if you get to a bowl game, it's a good year. But it's going to be tough, I think, for some of these teams to get to 6-6 this season. So back to Arizona again. They're supposed to be on tier number 6 here with Colorado, Duke, Vanderbilt, and Illinois. Somebody commented on the Pac-12 video. Arizona, they had a really good recruiting class, and they've got a lot of young talent, but they're going to be playing a lot of freshmen this year. And so I just don't really see them having a great year. Colorado in the Pac-12 as well, I think it's going to struggle. Duke, I think, clearly the worst team in the ACC. Vanderbilt, clearly the worst team in the SEC. And Illinois, clearly the worst team in the Big Ten. I don't think any of these teams have really any hope of making a bowl game. It would be a big surprise if they were able to do that. I did want to mention some of the Group of 5 and independents. I have not evaluated many of the Group of 5 teams just yet. I haven't done that deep dive. I have looked at Notre Dame and BYU and the independents, and I've done Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF. So I'll just mention those teams really quickly. I think UCF probably winds up here in tier number 4. UCF is a team that has a chance to be pretty good this year. They're kind of a team that could be a top 25 team like some of these other teams, but also potential for them to have a just an average year. And then I would go back to tier 3 for Houston and Cincinnati. I think those teams both have a chance to be pretty good this year. A lot of people are sleeping on Cincinnati, in my opinion, because they look at the big names that they lost. But they've got some guys coming back really on both sides of the ball to where they could be a good team in the American Conference once again. Not a playoff contender, but could be a good team. And then Houston has a lot of production coming back as well. So those two teams jump out to me. And BYU would be in this tier as well. A lot of production coming back for them. One of the more experienced teams in college football coming into 2022. So I would put BYU into tier number 3. Those are my tiers. Again, we'll go back through the top tiers. This was tier number 2. This is tier number 1. I would love to get your thoughts on my tier rankings. What do you think is really good? What do you think is really bad? I know there's going to be plenty of disagreement. And at this point, that's fair. It's preseason. Everyone has their opinions. I'm not going to be right about everything, but as of right now, that's how I would rank the teams and how I'd put them into tiers heading into 2022.